we take a contemplative look around the world and gather enough data to survey the types of cats spread across the globe, we'll find many species, large and small, tame and deadly. But if we look to identify the most ferocious and powerful types, we'll find, in certain regions, cats known for their skill, dominance, and ferocity. In the Americas, we find cougars and jaguars. In Africa, there are lions and leopards, while in Asia, tigers and leopards dominate. But when you turn your gaze to Australia, you won't find any big cats there. For several reasons we'll explore in this exciting episode, where we'll imagine the presence of one of the most feared felines among its kind, one of the most capable predators on the planet, the lion. If we assume its presence, we'll be faced with several crucial questions about life across the isolated continent, such as, would the presence of lions destroy Australia's entire ecosystem? How would lions adapt to a new world? And what would it mean for all the native species already living there? Let's begin by learning about the land known as Australia. As mentioned, there are no big cats there. No tigers, no lions, no jaguars, no leopards, no snow leopards, no cheetahs, no cougars, not even lynxes, caracals, or ocelots. There were reports of American soldiers arriving in Australia during World War II who brought cougars and leopards as companion animals. Perhaps some of these cats were released into the wild, but if so, their numbers were clearly limited. There's no trace of them today. In fact, Australia is home to some of the most unique species in the world, thanks to its isolation from other continents. It's famously known as the land of kangaroos, wallabies, wombats, and koalas, and rightly so. It also hosts many unique mammals and is the only place on Earth that contains all three kinds of mammals: placentals, monotremes, and marsupials. Among its predators is the dingo, the continent's only native wild dog. There are dozens of giant venomous snakes and spiders. If we told you the actual number, it might send chills down your spine. And let's not forget, Australia is full of deadly crocodiles. Both freshwater and saltwater species live here. These crocodiles dominate the northern regions of Australia, which are considered extremely dangerous. The further south you go, the less common they become due to the cooler climate. Crocodiles prefer to stay near warm water. Australia lies close to the equator. Its northern parts sit around 9 degrees south, stretching to about 44 degrees south, where the weather becomes colder. That's why Australia has such a diverse landscape: tropical rainforests, mountain ranges, remote inland areas, and deserts in the semi-arid interior. The outback is sparsely populated, with just about 3.4 people per square kilometer, equivalent to around 0.6 people per square mile. So, don't expect to see more than 7 people in every square mile of those vast areas. That's why most of Australia's population lives along the coast or nearby, where conditions are more suitable for humans. So now that we've understood the nature and climate of this continent, we must consider how to gather some lions and prepare to transport them. Let's head out on an exciting journey to Africa to obtain some of these lions. Africa shares many similarities with Australia. One of them is the diversity of habitats, including tropical rainforests, mountain regions, and deserts. Northern Australia lies near the equator, while the equator cuts through Central Africa. When we examine where lions live, we find they mainly inhabit sub-Saharan Africa, avoiding the vast desert. But the areas they do occupy are not tropical rainforests. Lions live in savannas, grasslands, and even dry plains, so they are well adapted to dry heat. They can also be found in mountainous areas, living at elevations up to 3,600 meters on Mount Elgon, along the Uganda-Kenya border, and even near the snow line of Mount Kenya. Therefore, in Australia, lions would likely avoid dense rainforests since they're not their preferred habitat. But they would thrive in the drier regions. The areas lions naturally inhabit rarely dip below 20 degrees Celsius, even in colder months, and they're accustomed to daytime temperatures between 26 degrees Celsius and 30 degrees Celsius. Due to these factors, lions prefer to stay near a permanent water source, but also require ample shade. They spend a lot of time in direct sunlight, so they need cover when necessary. They also prefer dense vegetation, like shrubs and tall grass, vital for hunting. Calling lions killers is no exaggeration. They must hunt to survive. Lions are large carnivores and need substantial meals. So how do you feed a predator that can weigh up to 225 kilograms? Lions prefer large-hoofed mammals, especially zebras, antelopes, gazelles, and buffaloes. These prey typically weigh between 225 and 900 kilograms. And lions don't usually eat alone. There's often a hungry pride to feed. A lion pride may consist of 6, 10, 15, or even more members. That's why they prefer larger prey for the whole group. However, if needed, lions can feed on smaller animals like warthogs, turtles, birds, rabbits, lizards, and mice. Usually, the females do most of the hunting, while males protect the pride and its territory. Lions must deal with rival predators trying to intrude and steal prey, such as hyenas, leopards, cheetahs, African wild dogs, and even other lions. But lions rarely struggle with these predators. They're larger and stronger than all of them. None of them can sneak up on an alert lion. And even if they manage to steal some food and flee, only a few escape the jaws of a killer lion. The only real threat to be wary of is the crocodile. Lions in Africa are very familiar with the thin-snouted West African crocodiles and the Nile crocodile. Nile crocodiles have terrifying bites, up to 2 tons of pressure per square inch. So lions have learned to approach water cautiously and leave quickly after drinking. Now that we've gathered enough information, let's assemble the lion group, say around 12 of them, and head toward Australia. We'll fly southeast across the Indian Ocean to deliver the pride safely. Upon landing, the lions begin to explore the new land. As they adapt, they discover many areas that resemble their native habitat, tropical rainforests they'd likely avoid, mountainous zones, open plains, and vast outback regions. All these regions are strikingly similar to the African savannas and grasslands. And since these areas are sparsely populated, that's perfect for the lions, just like much of the land they once ruled in Africa. So far, things are looking very good. As the lions explore more, they'll find water sources, cover for hunting, and shade to rest. Lions are already used to being apex predators, but they knew back in Africa that they had competition from other predators eager for prey and ready to steal kills. But in Australia, after surveying their surroundings, they'll realize there are no competing big cats, no hyenas, only dingoes, which are similar to African wild dogs. With competition reduced by about 25%, things just got a lot easier. As for crocodiles dominating the waters and sometimes venturing onto land, the lions will need to tread more carefully around these reptiles. Fortunately, they're already trained to avoid them. The real problem for lions lies in the scarcity of their favorite meals. Large hoofed mammals simply don't exist in Australia. The continent has been separated from the others for so long that many placental mammals never fully developed here. For this group of lions, their best options might be wallabies, wombats, koalas, birds, and lizards. But these are far smaller than the animals lions usually eat. They may feed one lion, but not a whole pride. That means they'll need to work harder to get meals, and not everyone will share. survival will belong to the fittest. There are some larger wild pigs, and of course, kangaroos. But kangaroos are a tricky case. Some are quite large, and they fight back. Literally, they punch. Lions may not enjoy hunting prey that resists, but they may have no choice and will eventually chase kangaroos too. Still, nothing compares to zebras or buffaloes for them. Over time, if the lion group continues adapting, thriving, and reproducing, African lions will remain larger than their Australian-born counterparts, who would shrink due to food scarcity. As for all the small marsupials, kangaroos, and wild pigs, they'll have to adapt to their new predator. They'll face a life-or-death struggle against a ruthless, ever-hungry beast. On the other hand, if the lions fail to adapt to the harsh conditions of Australia, their survival will hinge on food availability. If they struggle to find enough, they'll suffer great losses, brutal conflict, and hunger, ultimately leading to their extinction on the continent. Dear viewers, welcome. The time, March 1898. The place, Kenya, east of the famous Mount Kilimanjaro in the harsh Tsavo Desert. This is where it all began. Terrifying stories were passed down, and tragic news spread of men who met their end in the jaws of two of the fiercest lions of the time, who alone were responsible for the deaths of up to 135 people, leaving behind images of the victims and the immense tragedy that befell them. Throughout history, Tsavo lions were known as some of the fiercest man-eating types. Despite being smaller than their Serengeti counterparts who lived up the mountain, likely due to their harsh, resource-scarce environment. It was also said that these lions were usually found in small prides, often with only one male for mating, who held exclusive breeding rights. In contrast, most other prides included many lionesses and at least two males. As the slave trade routes developed through Tsavo, Kenya, many traders forcefully marched their captives across the barren lands. Due to the extreme heat, one of the slaves often died along the way, left behind as easy prey for predators. Many believe this gave the Tsavo lions an early taste for human flesh. The tragedy began when a team of Indian workers led by British Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson arrived in Kenya to build a bridge over the Tsavo River as part of the Kenya-Uganda Railway project. It seemed doomed from the start. As Bruce Patterson wrote in his book, The Lions of Tsavo, few men at the end of the railway knew that the name itself was a warning. Tsavo meant place of slaughter in the local language, referring to the killings committed by the Maasai people, who often attacked weaker tribes and slaughtered their men, long seen as an omen of doom by other communities. Shortly after John Henry Patterson and his team began construction, a worker went missing. After searching, his mutilated body was found. Fearing that a lion was responsible, Patterson, realizing the looming danger, set out the next day to stop the horror and track the beast. Instead, he found more bodies, men from earlier missions whose stories had been buried with them. The next day, another of Patterson's men vanished. By April, the number of missing had risen to 17. And that was just the beginning. The killings continued for months, with the clever, elusive lions outwitting every fence, barrier, and trap set up to stop them, causing hundreds of workers to flee and halting bridge construction. The lion attacks devastated the camp. No one could stop the massacres, especially since they often happened at night, when the hungry beasts stalked the workers relentlessly. Screams pierced the night as these savage predators dragged men from their tents into the wild. Most reports claimed 135 people were eaten by the two lions that year. But the company, eager to downplay the incident and avoid inflating the numbers, officially declared only around 30 workers missing. The violence didn't end until January of that year, when Patterson finally hunted the lions down. It wasn't easy. He built thorn barriers, lit night fires, and imposed curfews. Still, the attacks continued, leading fearful workers to believe in curses and even rebel against Patterson. It took Patterson months to kill the terrifying pair of African lions, who had grown massive from gorging on human flesh during months of slaughter. Patterson was instantly hailed as a hero for ending the brutal crime spree and praised around the world. Once the threat was gone, bridge work resumed and the workers finally regained confidence. The project was completed in February 1899. As a historical memento of the massacre, Patterson kept the lions' skins and skulls. In 1907, he published a best-selling book, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo. A quarter-century later, the skins and bones were sold to Chicago's Field Museum, where they were mounted and displayed to the public as legendary monsters. But the story didn't end there. Bruce Patterson, zoologist and Field Museum curator, spent years studying the lions. Chemical tests on their hair keratin and bone collagen confirmed they had eaten human flesh in the months before being shot. The tests also revealed one lion had eaten 11 people and the other 24, making the actual death toll just 35, far less than Patterson's claim of 135. In 2009, Nathaniel J. Dominy, associate professor of anthropology at UC Santa Cruz, said, "It was a historical mystery for years, and now the contradiction has finally been addressed. We can imagine the railway company had reasons to downplay the deaths, and Patterson may have had motives to exaggerate them." A second study revealed the lion who ate more people had dental disease, a bad jaw, and skull damage. He likely turned to eating humans out of desperation. Meanwhile, there was a noticeable decline in other prey, mainly elephants. So when humans entered the area, they became easy alternative meals. Although we know more today about the truth of the Tsavo lions, they remain mythical symbols of their era. As Bruce Patterson told the Chicago Tribune in 2009, the Tsavo lions' remarkable achievement was that they halted the British Empire at the height of its power in Tsavo. The story of the Tsavo lions became legend, told as a tale of courage and survival. But more importantly, it's a reminder that nature can be cruel and unpredictable, and that no matter how advanced mankind becomes, he remains vulnerable to untamable forces.
In the heart of the savannah, where life is measured by roars and death by silence, a lion was born. He wasn't the strongest nor the fiercest, but he was the smartest, the most steadfast and ambitious. He faced kings, saw empires collapse, and walked over their ashes like an invincible shadow. Perhaps he didn't seek the throne nor chase glory, but he engraved his name in the memory of the wild in a way no one ever had before. He wasn't just a lion. He was a legend, walking on 4 legs, a ghost that survived the jaws of death and emerged with pride from the heart of battles without bowing to his opponents. This is the story of Pretty Boy, the lion who chose to live free when others chose to die for glory. In this thrilling documentary, we won't just watch, we will feel, we will tremble, and we will respect the greatness of silence and the strength of the one who remains after the roar fades. Get ready. You are about to enter the world of the Mapogo lions, some of the most brutal and blood-soaked lions in the pages of history. Before the emergence of the famous Mapogo Coalition, Pretty Boy lived an ordinary life in the wildlands that would later become part of their empire. He wasn't known by that name yet. He was a young lion, still relying on his pride, learning the laws of survival in the wild. The scent of the wind, the danger of crocodile-filled rivers, and the meanings behind roars coming from afar. He watched the older males from a distance, sensing the hierarchy of power, witnessing the cruelty that came with it. He learned early that the world was not ruled by justice but by dominance. His mother cared for him, and his siblings played with him. But the safety of childhood was temporary. All around him, the wild was merciless. Hyenas lurked, and rival males invaded. One day, the dominant male who protected them disappeared. Perhaps he was expelled or killed. From that moment, everything changed. A shadow began to loom over his pride. Over time, the bonds between him and his pride began to weaken. He felt the change in the way adult lions looked at him. They no longer saw a cub, but a rising threat. As with all young males, he was expelled from the pride by the law of nature. He began wandering alone, avoiding stronger males, surviving on leftover kills, searching for a purpose. During his journey, he met others like him, exiles, cubs cast aside by life who chose solitude. Among them were those who would later be known as Mr. T, Kinky Tail, Rasta, Scar, and Makulu. At first, they formed fragile bonds, not out of friendship, but survival. They needed each other. They had nothing. And yet, the future was open before them. With every challenge they faced together, their bond grew stronger. As for Pretty Boy, the silent observer, he began to understand the power of unity. Their lives had changed from being lonely and empty, with no food, no land, no females, into a strong, united group. Their presence together changed everything. When they moved as one, other lions took notice, hyenas fled, and herds scattered swiftly. Indeed, the group began to move with clear goals. They entered lands ruled by dominant males, testing boundaries. Pretty Boy felt the thrill of danger, but also something else. He realized they were not just wandering lions, they could become rulers. It started with nighttime scouting missions, stealing kills and leaving signs in lands not their own. Over time, some of them grew more aggressive, especially Mr. T and Kinky Tail. Their intentions focused on attacking an old coalition in the east. They heard the roars of a pride ruled by aging males and cubs, an ideal opportunity. Pretty Boy wasn't loud or expressive, but he fully understood what the rest of the group wanted. This was their moment. If they succeeded, they wouldn't just survive, they would rule. So he looked at his 5 companions, each carrying their own scars, hunger and determination. There was no going back. The wild had cast them out, but they would return this time as invaders. Despite the rising momentum among the young lions, Pretty Boy may have hesitated. The recklessness of Mr. T and Kinky Tail troubled him. Their aggression and obsession with dominance clearly revealed their brutal nature. He had seen what happens to those who rise too quickly. The wild knows well how to slowly humiliate them. Perhaps he silently questioned whether this coalition was truly a path to survival, or a suicide led by reckless ambition. He didn't seek bloodshed for blood's sake. He knew what war between lions meant. Cubs slaughtered, mothers torn apart, males fighting to the death. He had seen it as a cub. He had smelled the scent of rotting wounds and corpses left behind by fallen kings. Later, when the moment came, when they neared enemy territory, Pretty Boy remained calm, while the others roared with excitement. Some surely noticed his silence, especially Scar, who didn't think he was ready. But Pretty Boy avoided him. Deep down, he didn't want war, but he had no choice. He knew he couldn't face the wild alone again. As for Makulu, the oldest among them, he wasn't the loudest or most violent either. His strength was in his long experience and sharp focus, reflected in the way others moved when he stepped forward. Pretty Boy watched him closely to learn. Makulu had survived horrors no one else had seen. He carried the calm of a lion who had faced death and returned stronger. One evening, before the first real confrontation, Pretty Boy found himself walking beside him. There was no fiery roar, only silence. Their steps in the dark were accompanied by the distant sounds of herds, while Makulu pressed forward with deep determination and one phrase echoing in his mind: "Either we do it together, or we don't do it at all." Those words were enough. He didn't promise them victory, nor glorify the fight. He only thought of their unity, the only weapon they had against the cruelty of the wild. Alone, each one of them was doomed. But united, as 6 strong lions, they could become something else. Something never seen in lion coalitions before. In that moment, Pretty Boy realized that the presence of Makulu gave him stability and resolve. He didn't need to roar the loudest or lead the charge. He only had to stand with his brothers when the moment came. And that moment was coming fast. And so, the 6 males entered enemy lands under the cover of darkness. The scent of the dominant males was still present, but faint, a sign of their weakening hold. The pride they targeted quickly surrendered, previously protected by kings whose strength had faded and influence had withered. At that time, their coalition had no name yet. They weren't the Mapogo. They were just 6 young males, driven by hunger and led by the goal of survival. Their first fight came quickly, roars tearing through the night as the aging males charged at dawn, trying to defend their legacy, but they were no match. One was killed instantly, the other fled. The weak cubs were crushed between the jaws of these 6 killers. The lionesses initially joined the aging males and fought fiercely, but soon surrendered. The coalition claimed the pride with ease and force. Pretty Boy fought alongside his brothers with a silent but ruthless style. He didn't indulge in chaos like Mr. T, who ripped through enemies with savage intensity. Instead, he was precise, strategic, striking where needed, retreating when necessary. When it was all over, he didn't celebrate. He stood at the edge of the plains, gazing over the land that now belonged to them. One by one, they snatched prides from their enemies. Their reputation spread like wildfire. Lions across the region whispered about the black-maned ghosts who left no cub alive, no king breathing. Pretty Boy was there in every battle, every roar, every moment the balance of power shifted. He was no longer a wanderer, no longer hesitant. He had become a conqueror, a member of the most feared coalition in modern wild history. Yet, in quiet moments, he still carried the burden of this path, what it had cost and what it would cost. The future wasn't lit with glory. He preferred survival and caution over arrogance. As the land expanded, so did the challenges. Dominance was not peace, but the beginning of a new war, a war of patience and endurance. The Mapogo coalition controlled vast territories, commanding several prides, pushing their borders further than any group had dared before. But each day was a new test. Pretty Boy quickly learned that strength alone wasn't enough to keep the throne. Tension began to rise within the coalition. Mr. T and Kinky Tail were always pushing for more. Insatiable, relentless, more brutal and unpredictable. Rasta and Scar became more isolated. Makalu tried to keep order, but barely succeeded. In the heart of this storm, Pretty Boy stood firm. He was respected because he never let bloodlust consume him. The lionesses trusted him more than the others. He was often seen lying close to cubs, alert but non-aggressive. He was the opposite of the chaos the others brought. Meanwhile, enemies were everywhere. Nomadic males trying to sneak into Mapogo lands, former kings plotting revenge, young coalitions forming in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Mapogo's response was always brutal. They tore their enemies apart with terrifying speed. Pretty Boy was always present. He might not have started the fight, but he never missed one. His presence balanced the scales. If Mr. T was fire and death, Pretty Boy was control and command. One day, one of their toughest challenges came from 3 strong young males circling the borders of their land. They were bold, organized, a clear sign that the new generation was watching and learning. Still, the Mapogo chased them relentlessly. But the message was clear. Time was shifting, and the balance would soon tip. Inside the coalition, cracks had already begun to spread, especially when Mr. T and Kinky Tail broke off, forming their own unit and leaving the others behind. That left Pretty Boy with Makulu, Rasta, and Scar. It wasn't just a split, it was the start of a collapse, a fracture in a fortress built on resolve and blood. Yet Pretty Boy survived every hardship, from enemy attacks to internal conflict. But the real challenge had yet to come. The challenge wasn't conquest. It was holding on to what was slowly falling apart. Time passed. The group that once seemed unbreakable had now fractured. Mr. T and Kinky Tail were operating separately, while the other 4, Pretty Boy, Makulu, Rasta, and Scar, defended what was left of their territory. The unity that made them an unstoppable force had started to crumble. The world around them was changing. The weight of past battles began to wear down their spirits. Pretty Boy stayed close to Makulu. They were more balanced and less reckless than the others. Rasta grew quieter. Scar limped from an old injury that never healed. The power they had built with yesterday's brutality now felt more like a fading memory than a living force. Their movements became fewer. They were no longer seeking expansion, but protection of what little remained. Yet new threats were already creeping toward them. Young coalitions began testing their strength. Roars of unfamiliar males echoed from beyond the borders, louder and more challenging than before. The wild no longer feared the Mapogo as it once did. Though they were still seen as legends of strength, the cracks in their ranks were undeniable. Pretty Boy felt it, as if the land itself whispered the calm before the storm. It was no longer about blood, it was about legacy. And as he patrolled the edges of his kingdom, he realized that the shadows closing in were not from outside, but from time itself. They had ruled for a long time. Now their turn had come to face the brutality of stronger, tougher enemies. In a battle that would decide their fate, maybe not now, but soon. The downfall began when Kinky Tail, who had separated from the others, was ambushed by a rival coalition. Though he fought fiercely, he was alone, and they were many. His body was found torn, lifeless. Mr. T responded with fiery rage. He returned alone to avenge his brother, and succeeded in killing one of the attackers, regaining some of his pride. But it wasn't long before he too was surrounded by enemies. He fought to his last breath, roaring until his voice fell silent forever. The Mapogo were now 4. News of 2 deaths spread quickly. Many lions were emboldened to attack the remaining members, especially after the death of the coalition's most savage member, Mr. T. Soon. A new coalition emerged, called the Majinjalane. 4 strong young males who followed in the Mapogo's footsteps, but with youthful hunger and modern warfare tactics. Pretty Boy felt the glory starting to turn against them. Their dominance was beginning to shrink. Then Rasta suddenly disappeared, likely killed in a skirmish. Soon after, Scar vanished as well. Whether he died or chose exile, no one knew. Only 2 remained, Pretty Boy and Makulu. They roamed together through the remnants of their former kingdom. They were no longer kings, but ghosts, moving silently, avoiding conflict, living on instinct and memory. Pretty Boy no longer sought battle. He sought refuge, peace, a place of safety. But the fierce Majingalane lions had begun to close in. They were strong, young, and more united than the Mapogo had ever been. Gradually, they took over the prides the Mapogo once ruled. The lionesses shifted their loyalty. Even the land itself seemed to forget who once walked it. Still, Pretty Boy didn't flee far from his former kingdom. He moved silently, choosing solitude over war. After facing death countless times, he now chose life. Their downfall wasn't caused by a single battle, but by a slow collapse of everything they had once built. Pretty Boy didn't survive through strength, but through isolation and extreme caution. He outlived all his brothers. He lived to see the rise and fall of the empire they once built, a force that had terrified everyone. He escaped death more than once, and now he roamed the wild as the shadow of a legend. No pride, no land, no kingdom, but he had preserved his life. In a world where strength is often measured by an early death, survival became the real reward. New lands fell under the rule of the Majingalane lions. Their roars filled the night. Their scent marked what was once Mapogo territory. But Pretty Boy had learned something none of them yet knew: how to survive, how to live after glory. He hunted when he could, avoided conflict when needed, and stayed on the move. Some lionesses from his old pride still remembered him, even let him approach. The cubs looked at him with curiosity, unaware of who he once was. He didn't need to reclaim a throne. The throne was already gone. What he carried now was something different: knowledge, wisdom, and awareness. The savannah quieted around him. Seasons changed. Rain fell and evaporated. Grass withered and bloomed again. Prey herds migrated across the plains, and Pretty Boy followed from afar. He no longer chased power, he simply existed, with caution and survival instinct. From time to time, he faced younger males. Some challenged him, most ignored him. He fought only when he had to, and rarely with the fierceness of his youth. The years had changed him. His body was leaner, scarred, but in his eyes still sparkled that flame from his younger days. Sometimes he returned to the places he once ruled: the water holes where battles had been fought, the trees where cubs once played, the borders he had marked with his roars. No one recognized him anymore. To them, he was just another lone male, lost. But in the wind, in the rustle of the grass, echoes remained. Faint, perhaps, but real. He had walked through fire, built an empire, lost everything, and still he lived. There were no celebrations waiting for him, no grand return, only a slow journey into the silence he had chosen. In his final days, Pretty Boy walked the edges of forgotten lands. His body slowed, his roar softened, but his eyes still held that same passion for life. Maybe he was no longer the lion he once was, but he was not broken. He entered a new phase of existence, one no longer ruled by dominance, but by wisdom and awareness. He could sense danger before seeing it, move without being seen, preserve energy, let go of things lions usually fight to the death for. He had no pride to defend, no cubs to protect, no land to claim. He had nothing left to prove. Pretty Boy lived for a short time beside a quiet waterhole, visited only by antelope and a few old lionesses. There he found moments of rest, moments of peace. He lay beneath the same stars that once lit his path as a king. In a world that never stops fighting, Pretty Boy became an unforgettable ghost. Despite his long wandering, narrow escapes, withdrawal from war, and solitary walks without fear, his day came. He passed beneath the shade of a tree. No audience, no final roar. He left with the wind, with the dust, leaving behind endless memories. He may not have left a kingdom or cubs, or a pride bearing his name, but the wild carried his legacy in its plains and hills as a lion who survived what others couldn't. His story traveled through the savannah, through lionesses who lay beside him, and through the memories of the Mapogo era. Young lions who came after him never saw him, but they lived in a world he and his coalition helped shape. A world still marked by the fearsome imprint of the Mapogo coalition and the thrilling, intense details of their lives as one of the greatest lion coalitions ever known. In the end, Pretty Boy wasn't the loudest, nor the most savage or destructive, but he was the one who remained. And in the wild, it is the one who remains who tells the greatest stories.
6 terrifying animals that can defeat the fearsome Komodo dragon. Legends take us back to tales of ancient dragons that breathe fire and death, but are they merely myths or terrifying truths? We may never know the answer, but some living beasts make those legends seem like madness. At the top of that list is the terrifying Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon can reach a length of 3 meters and a weight of 130 kilograms. It has strong legs ending in claws that tear flesh during an attack, and its teeth resemble those of a shark, locking onto its prey. The Komodo dragon can sprint at 11 miles per hour over short distances. Its saliva contains more than 50 types of toxic bacteria, making it nearly impossible for prey to survive a bite. Even if the prey escapes, it usually dies within 24 hours from infection, and the Komodo dragon can track it down and feed by following the scent. But what if the Komodo dragon faced off against another predator? Who would win? Let's dive into a list of the most dangerous animals that could stand up to the monstrous dragon. First, Komodo dragon versus crocodile. Crocodiles top the list of the world's deadliest predators. These fearsome creatures have existed since the age of dinosaurs and are the largest aquatic reptiles in the wild. They are designed for killing, with powerful jaws full of sharp teeth that sink deep into prey. Once a crocodile clamps down, escape is impossible. Only animals strong enough to disrupt the attack or fast enough to strike first can survive a crocodile. Attacking a fully grown Nile crocodile would be suicide for the Komodo dragon. Given the crocodile's massive weight, the dragon would find it nearly impossible to escape its jaws. Death would be inevitable. Crocodiles are also largely immune to toxins, so the Komodo's venomous bite likely wouldn't do much damage. Their aggressive immune systems attack bacteria on contact, making the Komodo's toxic saliva even less effective. Second, Komodo dragon versus hippopotamus. Although hippos are herbivores by nature, they are also among the most aggressive animals and are responsible for around 500 human deaths annually in Africa. Hippos are naturally more aggressive than the more patient and opportunistic Komodo dragon. Hippos can also run faster than the Komodo on land, giving them the upper hand in pinning down and crushing the dragon under their massive weight. Even though the Komodo has flexibility and better turning ability, it likely wouldn't be enough to escape a raging hippo. Thanks to the hippo's enormous jaw, capable of opening 180 degrees and immense strength, a single bite could easily crush the Komodo dragon in half. Their bite force is estimated at 2,000 pounds. Third, Komodo dragon versus anaconda. Large anacondas and other massive reptiles are known to prey on many kinds of reptiles. A truly massive anaconda could potentially kill and swallow a Komodo dragon. However, a large Komodo dragon might be able to kill a medium-sized anaconda. The Komodo dragon has learned over time to use tactical skill to outmaneuver larger prey or avoid deadly jaws. But if it isn't fast enough, the anaconda can crush it by coiling and squeezing until the dragon dies. This crushing could cause internal bleeding, weakening the Komodo and eventually allowing the anaconda to devour it. Even if the Komodo strikes first with its sharp claws and venomous bite, the venom takes time to act, too slow to stop the anaconda. The Komodo would likely lose the battle. Fourth, Komodo dragon versus tiger. If a tiger and a Komodo dragon were to fight, both might die. Komodo dragons are ambush predators. They attack, bite, release, and then follow their prey until the venom takes effect, then strike again to feed. Tigers are also ambush hunters. They leap from behind and aim for the spine, using a single crushing bite to paralyze or kill their prey. If the tiger jumps on the Komodo dragon, it would struggle against the dragon's armored neck and thick skin. Still, the tiger's immense bite force, which can penetrate crocodile skin, would eventually kill the Komodo. If the Komodo bites first, the tiger might still kill it, but die hours later from the venom. Fifth, Komodo dragon versus the king of the jungle, the lion. The Komodo dragon is the largest and most aggressive lizard on Earth, reigning over some islands in Asia with unmatched terror. But facing a dominant lion would result in a savage fight. Only one would walk away alive. Despite its size, the Komodo would be committing suicide by attacking the lion. The dragon may try to land its lethal bite, but the lion, with its power and intelligent tactics, would likely avoid the hit. The lion's bite force is 650 pounds per square inch, and its heavy paws make every strike dangerous. If the lion survives the bite, it would most certainly kill the Komodo dragon with its claws and fangs. Sixth, Komodo dragon versus the bear. If a Komodo dragon encounters a bear, especially one of the larger species, the bear would likely win. Bears can weigh up to 408 kilograms, many times heavier than the Komodo dragon, which weighs less than a quarter of that. This massive size gives the bear immense power. A strong strike from its claws could tear the Komodo apart. That doesn't mean the Komodo poses no threat. A bite could infect the bear, and the venom might eventually kill it within hours. But thanks to the bear's thick fur and loose skin, it's hard to land a lethal bite. This natural defense makes the bear much harder to kill. The Komodo dragon is no easy prey, but the encounter would likely become a brutal fight for survival.